All right, let's walk you through it. Acting White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney openly saying there was a quid pro quo with Ukraine, an admission he is now trying to backtrack. Gordon Sondland, U.S. Ambassador to the European Union, he testified that President Trump delegated all Ukrainian policy to Rudy Giuliani, who I'm sure you know by now is not a government official. He's President Trump's personal attorney. How about Kurt Volker, former special envoy to Ukraine? He testified that Giuliani gave the president a negative impression of the ousted, highly praised Ukraine ambassador, Marie Yovanovitch. Michael McKinley, former senior State Department aide, he testified that the Trump administration moved Ukraine policy away from career diplomats, which in part led to his resignation last week. George Kent, top State Department official in charge of Ukraine policy, he testified that he was told to, quote, lay low after raising questions about what Giuliani was doing in this mix. Fiona Hill, the president's former top Russia advisor, she testified that former National Security Advisor John Bolton called Giuliani a hand grenade. Marie Yovanovitch, former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, she testified the president pressured the State Department to fire her. Then there was the State Department's Inspector General, who briefed Capitol Hill on Giuliani's attempt to put together an entire smear campaign against Yovanovitch. And of course, the infamous text messages obtained by investigators between Sondland and another diplomat, Bill Taylor, about that very phone call between President Trump and Ukrainian President Zelensky. I will let that exchange speak for itself. Taylor said this, quote, as I said on the phone, I think it is crazy to withhold security assistance for help with a political campaign. Sondland responding in part, quote, the president has been crystal clear. No quid pro quos of any kind. We should remind you, NBC News learned that Sondland spoke with President Trump on the phone before responding to that text message. Joining me now on Capitol Hill, NBC's Leanne Caldwell. Leanne, that is a lot that we have gotten in the last week and a half. Any word on whether or not Mulvaney or Rick Perry are going to comply?
No word yet, Steph, but there's been a pattern that has emerged. Administration officials have refused to comply with any sort of document or subpoena request from congressional investigators. They're saying essentially that they're not going to cooperate because this is a sham impeachment process. So I'd be more shocked if Mulvaney and Perry did comply than if they didn't. Now, what are Democrats going to do about it? So Democrats have decided that they are done with the courts. That takes too long of a process. Instead, they're just going to put all of this non-compliance in the obstruction bucket and use it toward an article of impeachment should it come to that.
Leanne, thank you so much. I want to bring into this conversation NBC correspondent, my dear friend Jonathan Allen, and Democrat from the state of New York who voted to impeach President Nixon, former Congresswoman Liz Holtzman. She's also the author of The Case for Impeaching Trump. John, I want to start with this. Greg Sargent from the Washington Post said that Mick Mulvaney trying to walk back the quid pro quo doesn't even pass the laugh test. Here's the thing. This administration doesn't care if we're laughing, if we're setting our hair on fire, or if we're saying this crosses a red line. They're doing it, they're doubling down on it, and they're not leaving office.
Yeah, but there's a problem for the administration on Capitol Hill. It's on Capitol Hill right now. Because they've got their guys going out there, they're real tough loyalists going out there, and they're saying there was no quid pro quo. They've been doing it for weeks. They're coming out of these depositions, and they're saying these guys are testifying, the folks from the State Department, Volker and others, and they come out and they say there was no quid pro quo here. And then Mick Mulvaney goes out and says, hey, there was a quid pro quo. Not only that, but it's standard operating procedure. I've been talking to folks on the Hill this morning on the Republican side, talking to Republican aides, and they say this is a massive problem for us.
Okay. They're saying that behind closed doors. And you're saying this assuming we're playing a game where the goalposts don't get moved every possible day. So is it really a problem? Yes. There are certain Republicans who are standing up and giving speeches on the Senate floor that appear to be showing courage. But Mitch McConnell has been in Washington for decades. He's not saying anything. Do you actually think it's a problem for the president in any significant way beyond embarrassment?
That's indicative that Mitch McConnell isn't saying anything. If Mitch McConnell felt like there wasn't a problem right now, if Mitch McConnell felt like public opinion couldn't change on this, Mitch McConnell would be pounding a lectern, screaming to the heavens about how innocent the president was and how wrong the Democrats were. And what we're hearing from Republicans is that the Democrats are running a bad process. We're not hearing about how the president is in the right here. We're not hearing about how what the president did is right and just. What we're hearing about is how the Republicans don't like the process. So what you are hearing from Republicans and what you're not hearing from them suggests a real concern that the public opinion on this is going to change, and Republicans are going to get boxed into a corner where they have to choose between a base that tremendously supports Trump no matter what he does and a peeling away piece of the Republican Party and independents who look at what's going on and say, this really isn't the way the country is supposed to be run.
What do you think?
Well, first of all, let's just go back to Watergate. I remember, it's a long time ago, but it's a very important model. No Republicans on the House Judiciary Committee came out in favor of impeachment, despite all the evidence, until just days before we had our debates on the actual articles of impeachment. So they didn't want to get out in front. The fact that Republicans are quiet or silent doesn't mean that they're not aware of the evidence and that they're not aware of public opinion. We know that public opinion has shifted already. That's even before Mulvaney confessed to having that there was a quid pro quo and that the president told him that there was a quid pro quo with regard to holding up the military aid to Ukraine for political purposes. So I think several things are going to happen. One, public opinion is going to continue to shift against the president because these facts are damning and they're horrifying. The president is taking the powers of his office and using them for blatant political purposes, not permissible. So public opinion is going to shift. And then there are also some people of conscience and principle. We don't know who they are. Turned out that way in the impeachment in the House Judiciary Committee. We had 3 Southern Democrats whose districts were as pro-Nixon as any Republican district. It was a tough vote for them. All of them voted for impeachment. So we and 7 Republicans voted for impeachment. So I wouldn't count out what's happening. The facts are coming out. The facts are very dangerous for the president. The public is being swayed. We see the polls now. And I believe that this, I think impeachment is definitely on, not just on the horizon, but I believe it's going to happen.
John, what happened yesterday? It's been reported that people inside the White House are furious at Mick Mulvaney for his performance in that press briefing. Was he not prepared for it? Why was he the person? Stephanie Grissom isn't there, doesn't appear to be showing up for a press briefing anytime soon. And I was under the impression that's actually what her job function is.
Well, it used to be that the White House press secretary would go out and give press briefings. We haven't seen a press briefing in her tenure. Mick Mulvaney was sent out there as the face of the White House and managed to complicate things at best. He went out there and admitted to things that are, at the very best, potentially impeachable offenses, as the Congresswoman was saying, the quid pro quo that the president had been denying, that all of his defenders on the Hill had been denying. That's one piece of it. Then you've got another piece of it where you're talking about the impoundment of money that Congress has appropriated for Ukraine. Just in and of itself, the White House is not allowed to stop that money from going out the door for political purposes. They can defer it for a little while if there's an administrative reason. If the money's going to run out before the end of the year, they can slow it down a little bit. They can't do it for a political reason or for a policy reason. And the other thing the president can't do is he can't use the power of his office to try to win his next election. You're not allowed to do that. And so all 3 of those things are potentially impeachable offenses, and all 3 of those things are things that Mick Mulvaney went out, not only said he did, but said are standard operating procedure and said that the American public should get over it.
He did. He literally said, get over it. Liz, I want another history lesson from you. What do you make of the timing of Rick Perry's resignation one day before the subpoena deadline? Do you get the sense that members of this administration are getting more and more scared that we're getting closer to impeachment?
Of course. And by the way, the impoundment issue, talking about a history lesson, the impoundment issue, that law that prohibits withholding money was written in response to Richard Nixon and Watergate. I voted for that bill. And it's ironic that they're withholding money now for political purposes, but this isn't just ideological purposes. This is for winning an election. It's impermissible. It's against the law. The law was written in Watergate to stop this kind of presidential abuse. It's amazing that it's being repeated. But yes, the rats are fleeing the ship. Make no mistake about it.
And by the way, the budget director, the guy who's supposed to know this, Mick Mulvaney, before he was chief of staff,
we forget
the budget
that.
director,
We forget he's not just acting chief of staff, head of OMB.
the one thing he should know is the budget law.
And I think one of the reasons he's frightened is because there are people in the budget office who know exactly what was going on. And these are people who are going to come forward. The problem the president has is that he can't cover up because too many people know too much.
Is this the big difference right now? When we think back to the Mueller investigation or other times in this administration, the president has been very successful at stonewalling.
Correct.
Don McGahn's not talking. His chief of staff is postponing. Hope Hicks is showing up, smiling, saying nothing. President Trump's taxes, good luck. You're never going to get them. But in this case, Mick Mulvaney might be stonewalling, or Mike Pompeo, or Vice President Pence.
He wasn't stonewalling. He told the truth about a quid pro quo.
But every day that we're here reporting on this, somebody else is going and testifying.
Correct.
Isn't that different this time?
Yes, that's and in a way we also had that in Watergate. There were people who knew things who came forward. We even had Deep Throat, who turned out to be an FBI person who told the press about what was going on behind scenes. So there are people now, too many people. People in the budget office know what was going on. People in the State Department know what was going on. People in the Defense Department know what was going on. So too many people, too many eyes, too many ears, too many brains. President can't shut everything down. That's why he's in real trouble, and that's why there's a meltdown. Nancy Pelosi said, pray for him. He's melting down. We are having him. I mean, he doesn't even know where to stop. Is he building up his nest for leaving the White House because he's now getting the G7 to come and stay at Doral? What is that about? And then Syria, making these irrational, crazy decisions. That's kind of Nixon-esque too. Towards the end, Nixon also had a meltdown.
Hey, MSNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there and click on any of the videos here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more MSNBC for free every day with our newsletters. Just visit msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up now.